Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by James Barber, co-founder of MySupperHero. So MySupperHero provides restaurant quality meal kits delivered nationwide. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast.
So they say timing is everything in the startup world, right? But we seem to be coming off a peak around the market growth for the meal delivery niche, the meal delivery industry. So what's the opportunity you see here and why now?
It's a good question. I mean, I started thinking about this space during COVID, during the lockdown period, but actually we didn't put it into place until all of the restrictions had been relaxed, so which is quite counterintuitive. But the rationale, the thinking behind it is that over that lockdown period, like everybody was kitchened out, and we were very frustrated by the lack of ways to eat really brilliantly at home. So we overdosed on delivery and just couldn't handle any more kind of junky deliveries. We tried a lot of the basic meal boxes, the kind of recipe boxes where you get raw ingredients in a recipe card, and found them quite basic, time consuming. And then we just couldn't find a way to eat really well at home in less than 10 minutes of effort, so that got command of your own time to do other things. So this kind of thought process happened over COVID. But then after COVID, after the restaurants started to reopen, and I own a lot of restaurants, so I'm happy for people to go to restaurants, but I still found that need to be able to eat really well at home sometimes without spending hours at the stove. And actually I felt that the proposition for this kind of premium affordable meal kit service, I found that proposition still held, and that's why we started to explore it. So we didn't really get going until the early part of this year, after I suppose everything had reopened.
So what's the promise here? What's the differentiator? Because it's a very competitive landscape, and perhaps with that, not to name any names, but if you could paint us a picture of the competitive landscape with what is it that you different, it would, I think, be a good base for the people listening to us.
Sure. So, I mean, I think our competition, I think of our competition, funnily enough, as being delivery or Deliveroo or Uber Eats or any kind of delivered service, Just Eat or whatever it might be, because that's kind of where we're pricing it. So if you think about the traditional landscape for meal kits, you either have the very basic recipe boxes, which we talked about before, which, you know, these guys, they're everywhere, and they do a very good job at what they do, the HelloFreshes and the Gustos and the Mindful Chefs. But they are raw ingredients, raw onions, raw carrots, raw chicken. And so whatever you do, you are still having to chop and you're having to peel, and they drive very well on price, but the entire experience, for me, I found lacking. Then at the other extreme, there were meal kits, which were super expensive and very fiddly. Quality was very high, but they were kind of copies of restaurant meals, which is not what I want to do, because I own restaurants. As I said, I don't want a copy of a restaurant meal. I want people to go to restaurants. So what we're trying to do is to, at the sort of £25 for two people price point, make an experience where you can have restaurant quality meals in your own home, but it should take you no less than 10 minutes to put together. And I couldn't find that solution. It felt very obvious that there should be that solution, but we couldn't find it. We couldn't find any way of being able to eat well and then go and watch Netflix or catch up with friends in a very short amount of time. And that's what the genesis of MySupperHero was.
So how does MySupperHero enable this experience? Because there's always, and as a restaurateur, you're aware of this, there's always the role of the chef. It's an amazing component of the delicious meal. And not all people have chef-level cooking skills. So on the one hand, you can bring fresh, great, amazing ingredients to their door, but then how does that translate into a restaurant quality meal?
So we've got a team of unbelievably accomplished and skillful chefs, and we basically do all the hard work for you. So we do all of the chopping, the peeling, the marinating. I mean, we've got sauces that we make that that they've been kind of reducing for 2 or 3 days. We do, so everything that you would need to do. I give you an idea. In the autumn time, we've got a Coca Merlot coming back on the menu, which was really popular earlier this year, and a Cassoulet. If you were going to do that from scratch, it would take you a good few days because it is a long process. It is a very, very involved process. But we have done all of that work for you, so you can assemble that at home in less than 10 minutes. Obviously, you've still got to put it in the oven. There's still kind of cooking time, as in heating time, if you put these things together. But in terms of the amount of effort that it would take to put them together, it's less than 10 minutes. And for me, as a home chef, the most important thing is there's almost no washing up, which is that's a massive bonus for me.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about your background. I think it's some people already know you. I presume I have a hunch. I've done some Googling around your experience as well. A lot of really impressive stuff. But can you tell us about a bit of your background? So in the context especially of why you for this business, and then we can go on to talk about the team as well a bit.
Sure. Well, I mean, I've done lots of different things. I think this is, and some of these have been concurrent, but I think this is probably my 5th type of business. So originally I was a corporate lawyer. I was an entertainment lawyer. So I used to do law in the media, film, TV, entertainment generally. I had some fantastic clients. And one of my clients was Roger Moore, the former 007, who passed away a couple of years ago. And his son, Jeffrey, became a very good friend of mine. And Jeffrey was trying to start a restaurant, didn't know how to start a restaurant. And I said, look, you know what, I'll leave law and why don't we start a restaurant, kind of glamorous restaurant together, and your father can be involved and he can bring his friends. So spontaneously, and I was only 27 at the time, I left law and I started this restaurant with the Moores.
Was this Hush? Yes.
Hush, yeah, which is now in its 22nd year and still going. I mean, this will be our best ever year. So I got into the restaurant, built this restaurant, and then since then I've started and built and sold dozens of different restaurant groups, everything from Japanese and Italian and French, and at the moment we've got a group of 15 restaurants around London, but we've got a couple in Saudi Arabia of all places. So we're kind of spreading internationally. And every time we do a new restaurant, it feels like a startup because you're doing something completely new area, completely new team. So I kind of feel like, and actually after my last restaurant, I said, God, I just do not want to do another startup. And then I seem to have got the bug. And 6 months later, I ended up starting MySupperHero.
Amazing. For a lot of people, I was mentoring in one of the co-working spaces in East London, and there was this company who was building a very similar business. Like this was 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a very competitive landscape. That's why I've opened with the question of why now, and of course always the question of why now is accompanied by the question of why you in the world of startups. But like in your case, you have such a strong foundation, having owned really successful restaurants. It really does instill a source of trust when I look from my perspective here that this business has a lot of potential to be successful. I'm guessing there are some advantages to having the experience, the background you have. But in your point of view, what are the unfair advantages that you have, the competitive advantages that you have, compared to let's say a founder who knows tech but really does not get the restaurant business, does not have the connections? What's your thoughts on this?
So it's an interesting thing because my background and experience is an advantage for this business and a disadvantage. So the advantage is that I have come at this absolutely with a consumer and with a food bias. So all I'm interested at this stage is the customer experience, and I kind of almost want to bring a spirit of hospitality, because that's what I've been doing for 20 years, into the home. So this is very much, it feels like a lifestyle place. So not only does the quality of the ingredients and the quality of the food that you eat have to be unbelievably fantastic, but also the whole experience of opening the box, the photography that we use on the website, the ease of navigation, all of that needs to be part of the experience. So I'm leveraging on my experience to enhance the experience, if that makes sense. Whereas I think there are quite a few of players in this market that have come at it with a tech head first, and hospitality has come second. And that is, I think that's not the right way of doing it. Saying that, I am definitely disadvantaged by not being not being a CTO type person, because there is a lot of tech that's involved in this. There's a lot of learning that we could end up engineering, and there's a lot of logistics that needs to be thought through. And I'm playing massive catch up. So every day I'm learning more lingo, more ways of being able to convey what it is that I'm trying to achieve. So yeah, I think it's I think for a consumer led proposition, I think the balance of being a consumer operator is the best way of approaching it.
UX above all, that's the defining feature of all of the successful businesses. You can sort most of the things out. But it makes me curious, do you have a CTO? Do you have a co-founder with this one?
No, well, I have a co-founder, but not a CTO co-founder. So my co-founder is a broadcaster musician called Mylene Klaas, who people might remember was in one of the very early X Factor type programs. She was in a band called Hearsay. And is now, so she's now a broadcaster on Classic FM, and I don't know if she'd use this expression, but I think she was what would be classed as a mum-trepreneur, in that she's a mother. She's got a kids swimwear brand, and she does a lot in that space. So she's an entrepreneur, and also has, I think, between Instagram and TikTok, has about 1 million followers on those platforms. So that's very helpful for us in terms of projecting our message out.
Amazing. So off the bat, you've solved, at least you have a really strong start in terms of growing the reputation of the business, creating awareness. Also, you have a good edge on creating a winning menu. You know what users, your guests want. So a lot of things going for you. It seems a good start. So walk us through what happened with the business so far. When did you start it? How many customers do you have currently? Tell us about the numbers and where you are currently.
The first thing I would say is that we've done very little in terms of marketing at the moment, because we've only been going for 5 or 6 months. And we consider ourselves still in the pilot and the beta stage. So all that we've been doing at the moment is testing the proposition. So we have been entirely focused on the quality of the product, the way that it's transported, the UX, the logistics. So we have done nothing in terms of customer acquisition, and we're not ready for that yet. I think that's what we're going to be starting in September. So at the moment, although that we've kind of facilitated thousands of kits, they've been mostly internal, and not when I say internal, I mean they've come from within our ecosystems. We haven't really broadcasted it out to the world. I think we're just starting to try and build awareness. So at the moment we're in this beta and pilot stage, and we're still settling on the type of model that the business is going to adopt from the autumn onwards. A big topic of internal discussions about what repeat customer looks like, and how we encourage repeat custom, and whether that's a subscription or whether that's a membership, or whether we just rely on one-time purchases and try and engage people as quickly as possible. So at the moment it's not a question. It's not a business that's in hyperdrive. This is in the learning phase.
Got it. In your website, MySupperHero.com, for the audience out there, you have your meal kits. A really interesting items here as well. The miso salmon bao buns with sticky teriyaki roast broccoli, and you have the hero burger and a few other things. And
That
These
miso salmon bao bun is fantastic.
I'm sure I'm hungry already. It's lunchtime and I'm doing intermittent
That's a great.
fasting, so I'm very hungry right now. So I'll give this a go. Make an order from your site because I'm curious about the experience as well. So you have how do you gather feedback from the people who've ordered these?
So actually, and this is one of the things that you can do when you're a startup phase, is we have the normal channels to gather feedback like Trustpilot, but I have a group of tasters that's on my WhatsApp group that regularly share ideas about how we can improve things or how we can enhance the experience.
It's kind of like a beta readers for authors in a way. Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. And actually, I've taken a lot of their feedback and acted on it. So some of it was very helpful about portion sizes, about pricing. So that's been very good, about people wanting boxes for 4 rather than boxes for 2. So that's been helpful. And then I do some Zoom calls, one-to-one Zoom calls with either the tasters or with other people. But actually, I contact on a one-to-one basis through WhatsApp at least 10 customers a week and ask them about their experience. And people actually during this startup phase are very, very happy to communicate and to share their experiences.
Amazing. So that ear to the ground mentality is what defines great founders, in my opinion, to really take the time to listen to their customers because it's all in these little details, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A concern that I have, and this comes down to our purchasing habits in the modern age, and I have to ask this. And I'm not just asking this because this is a hot topic, but because we have to really do something about it, is the environment-friendly packaging nature of these things. My personal experience is I have a sense of guilt, and I'll be honest with this, I have a certain sense of guilt whenever I order something, and I can understand their logic. They are trying to create an amazing unboxing experience for the person who ordered the food. But half my mind is like, do we really need to create this much waste for me to eat one portion of meal? And then I have this nagging feeling. I don't know, have you felt anything like this? Have you experienced anything like this personally? And have you got any feedback from your clients? And what are you doing about this?
Well, it's an excellent question, and something that I care very much about. So we've set ourselves up as a B Corp, which is the highest standards of social impact generally.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's great. So to answer your specifics, so in London, all of the kits are delivered by an eco fleet, which is carbon neutral. So there's no carbon footprint on the London deliveries. Outside of London at the moment, we have to use DPD, and DPD have got a commitment by 2026, I think, to have 80% of their fleet electric, but at the moment it's not. So that's a bit of a problem. In terms of the internal packaging, all of the elements that look like plastic, 90% of them are plant-based, and so they have significantly less impact than plastic packaging.
Brilliant.
It's very hard. It's very expensive to do that, but we had to take that on the chin. I think because we've got a more premium pricing, so our pricing, as you can see on the website, is about £25 to £28 for 2 people. But because that's more expensive than a HelloFresh at whatever they are at £5 a meal, I suppose it means that we can invest more in that packaging, but it is expensive. And all of our insulation is a wool byproduct, which is something that is compostable. And so we have thought a lot about it, and I think it's a journey, and I think we're not complete yet, but hopefully when people order these, they will have less guilt than they would do if they were dealing with an operator that doesn't think about what the impact on their environment is.
I'm incredibly excited to hear that you're a B Corp. This is something we've spent a lot of time on Startup Soft London. We have a few bits and pieces of content on YouTube and on other channels. We had few startups who shared their journey as B Corps. I think it's important, and for the people, I always try to make a habit of mentioning this. When a company is not a B Corp, the CEO has the fiduciary responsibility to make maximum amount of money for the business. Otherwise, they're not doing their job. And in a B Corp, it's more flexible, and you have to also factor in the environmental cost. Like as you've said, this is a journey. This is a long road ahead of us, but it's a good start. So I'm really happy to hear about it.
Yeah, and actually, the great thing about B Corp is that although environment is certainly one factor of it, it's all of the all your impacts in your environment, in your wider environment. So it also recognizes the way that you relate to your staff, the way that you relate to suppliers, what you can do to support local communities. So, for example, to give you an idea, we have our salads that we use at MySupperHero. They're all grown hydroponically in water locally.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So, so they're completely 100% organic, and they're fantastic. And it's actually started by a friend of mine called Sebastian Sainsbury. But the salads that you get on SupperHero are actually harvested within 100 meters of where our kitchens are, and they are literally plucked the day that we dispatch them. So you don't get anything fresher than that. But in terms of being able to locally source, I don't think there's much better that you can do than that.
Thinking in terms of the market size, data-driven approach to entrepreneurship does not always come intuitively to some founders, but from my personal experience, and this is a mistake that I've done in the past, it's absolutely vital to look at the market size for any product, any service that you're developing as a founder. I don't know if you would agree. I would guess you would agree with this. And because you're within the industry, you have an instinctive understanding of what people want, and that's absolutely valuable. But have you done any market research, or have you worked with any partners to really pinpoint the market size for the very specific thing that you're delivering, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are essentially a sort of a treat, a sort of an indulgence, because it's quite expensive and so on. And this is from the group of people who want this. They are choosing your experience rather than ordering a fully cooked done meal, and also versus going out to a restaurant. So when you factor those out, what type of a market size are you left with? Have you ran the numbers on this? So
I would take issue with one thing that you've said there, which is that this is a treat or an indulgence, because when you price these meals at £12.50 per person, you are really benchmarking it. I think it is very difficult to order anything on Deliveroo or Uber Eats or Just Eat without spending that kind of money. I think the last time I looked, even if you ordered some noodles and something else on Wagamama, it'll be up in that price. And yet people use those services very, very regularly, and it is not really considered to be a treat or an indulgence. Yeah. So, I'm trying to...
I'm also factoring in the cost of the actual effort. Although it's 10 minutes, it is still something for the increasingly lazy mentality we all seem to have with this work from home situation and so on. So, it's, yes, the cost, but also the effort. So it ends up being more expensive is my approach, but absolutely feel free to disagree.
It depends if you class it as an effort, because what we've reserved, the 10 minutes that we've reserved for you is the 10 minutes that is the fun bit. It's the way for you to be able to make an impact on the dish, and
okay.
You can post your effort on Instagram, and you feel like you've really interacted with that dish. So it is an enjoyable part of the experience. Chopping an onion is not enjoyable. That is not much fun. Pouring coconut broth over a Thai sea bass is quite fun, and especially when it all steams up, and then it just looks amazing. So we, our best customers are the ones that are saying to us, we used to have a takeaway once a week, and now we as a family use your service, and we find that it's a really fun experience. We have a bottle of wine while we'll do it, and they do it every week. So I don't, what I don't want to be is the sort of service that people decide that they're going to use it on an anniversary, because that's of no interest to me at all. And there are some very successful meal kit players that really, the ones that there's one in particular that raised a lot of money last year, but it feels that they're very driven towards birthdays and anniversaries and Mother's Day, and we are part of the weekly meal cycle. We don't force people to have it on a weekly basis, but people are using it or choosing it to use it once every 1 week or once every 2 weeks because it's fun.
In that case, let me adjust my question about the market size, where I replace the Indulgence and instead focus on the group of people who see this as an experience and who enjoy this. Would that work for you?
Yeah, and I think that when you think of it that way, I think it's broad. I think we've got a huge white space outside of London, and actually maybe 65% of our orders are now coming from outside of London, or certainly outside of dense urban areas where the ability to get a huge number of options on delivery or takeaway are quite limited.
It does make sense, though, yeah. I live in London, and I'm spoiled because I can open the delivery app, and there are lots of choices. They're quite junky choices, but there's still choices there. But actually, the further outside of dense urban areas you get, those choices are limited, and people regularly. You talk about 10 minutes being an effort, but outside of London, people will drive 15 to 20 minutes to go and pick up a takeaway and then drive it back. 40-minute round trip journey to eat a takeaway, which is not going to travel particularly well, and by the time you get it home, it's usually lukewarm. That's not a great experience. No.
Being able to eat our meal at the same price with 10 minutes of fun attached to it, that is great. And the quality of the product is just like streets ahead of what you could pick up from a regular takeaway.
It does make sense. I'm glad I asked this question because it does, I think, do a fair job of pinpointing the target customer you have, and because this is a practice for the entrepreneurs and founders out there, I think this is a great way to crystallize how you think about the business. Really know your customer, really know what they're looking for. Yeah.
But very interestingly, there's an amazing guy that I speak to quite regularly who's kind of mentoring me. A guy called, I don't know if you've come across Rory Sutherland. Have you ever come across him?
Yes, I have.
So he's a great TED Talk speaker, and he's the chairman of Ogilvy, and he's the head of their behavioral change practice. And we've talked a lot about it because what I'm trying to do does require some behavioral change, because we're trying to explain to people how this can enhance their weekly or bi-weekly life. How this can be just a great fun addition to the way that they consume food on a regular basis. There aren't that many ways that you could have at home a half a spatchcock Korean sticky chicken with kimchi fried rice and rice cakes and put the whole thing together in 10 minutes. It just, that kind of opportunity is out of a lot of people's grasp, and we're providing it to them, but we've got to explain to them first what the proposition is, and that's challenging.
Jamie, this was an amazing chat. Thank you for taking the time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.